Welcome back to Recap Junkies. Today, we're diving into an intense psychological thriller from 2024, Don't Move. Directed by Adam Schindler and Brian Netto and distributed by Netflix. This chilling story is filled with tension and unexpected twists. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film starts when the moonlight filters through the window, casting a soft glow over the room. Iris, a woman in her late 30s, lies awake in bed. Her eyes are distant, filled with sorrow as she gazes at the ceiling. The room is quiet, except for the soft breathing of her husband, who sleeps soundly beside her. She quietly slips out of bed, careful not to disturb him. She walks over to the drawer, pulls out a knife, and silently heads for the door. As she steps outside into the cold night air, she leaves her phone behind, a sign of her disconnect from everything around her. At this point, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content. We appreciate your support. The engine of her car hums as Iris drives through the dark, dense forest, the trees casting long shadows across the road. Her headlights illuminate the winding path ahead. After some time, she parks her car at the edge of a rocky mountain trail. She steps out, gripping the knife tightly, her breath visible in the cold air. The sound of gravel crunching underfoot fills the air as Iris climbs the rocky path, each step deliberate. At the top of the mountain, she stops in front of a small memorial, a weathered stone with her son Mateo's name etched on it. She pulls out a small boat toy, the one her son used to play with, and places it gently at the memorial. Her fingers trace the edges of her son's photo, and she stares at it wistfully, a deep sadness in her eyes. Iris takes the knife and begins carving an initial M into the trunk of a nearby tree, unfinished, just like her son's life. The sound of scraping wood fills the air, and for a moment it seems like she's in a trance. Suddenly, a gust of wind howls through the trees, startling her. She turns around expecting to see something or someone, but there's nothing. She shakes her head, trying to clear her thoughts, and looks back at the vast forest below. Her hand clenches into a fist, her inner turmoil evident. A fleeting thought crosses her mind. Should she end it all here? Before she can decide, a voice interrupts her. A man named Richard appears out of nowhere, standing at the edge of the trail. He notices the memorial and asks what it means, but Iris remains silent, not ready to share her pain. As she stares down into the distance, Richard jokes, "If you're going to jump, at least tell me your name first." Richard's lighthearted demeanor fades as he opens up about his own struggles. He tells Iris about his past as a car enthusiast and the accident that changed everything. His girlfriend, Chloe, was with him when it happened, and they were arguing just before the crash. He still feels guilty about the last words he said to her. His voice cracks as he explains how he spent 2 months bedridden after the accident. Iris listens quietly, feeling the weight of his words. Then she begins to share her own grief. She talks about Mateo, how he was carving their initials into a tree while she was picking wildflowers. She recounts how Mateo boasted about finding 3 sticks to roast marshmallows in under a minute, but she didn't believe him. She went off to gather the flowers, not hearing when her son fell. A tear escapes her eye as she admits, "I couldn't cry. That's the worst part. I feel broken." Richard comforts her, telling her that being broken doesn't mean she's hopeless. His words resonate with Iris, and for the first time in a long while, she feels seen. As they part ways, Richard encourages her to choose what comes next for her. Iris finally speaks, revealing her name. Richard gives her one last look, a soft smile on his face, and tells her to remember that she's not alone in the world. He walks away, and Iris watches him go, feeling something shift inside her. She turns around and begins the journey back down the mountain, her steps lighter. Back at their cars, Iris thanks Richard, but before she can say goodbye, He asks if she'll ever return to the hilltop. She assures him she won't. He smiles and says, "I'll take today," and drives off. However, as Iris tries to get into her car, she realizes it's blocked by Richard's vehicle. The space is too tight. Richard gets out and approaches her with a strange, unnerving umbrella in hand. She asks if it's for rain, but he simply says, "You can never be too prepared." Without warning, he plunges the umbrella's base into her stomach, a surge of electricity coursing through her body. She gasps, her body stiffening as she collapses. Richard quickly hogties her, throwing her into the back seat of his car. Iris awakens in a panic, trying to make sense of what's happening. She attempts to call her husband using her smartwatch, but Richard tells her there's no signal out here. He mocks her as she pleads with him, stating that he's heard the same words from countless women before. He places the toy boat near her, a cruel reminder of her son. As she struggles, she reaches for the knife that's been tucked into her restraints and begins cutting the plastic tie around her wrists. She distracts Richard by asking about Chloe, his girlfriend, but he sidesteps the question, demanding that Iris tell him her son's name. "Mateo," she whispers. Her voice cracks as she asks if Chloe was beautiful. Richard says she was, but he's clearly growing impatient. Iris frees herself and makes a sudden move, attacking Richard, causing the car to veer off the road and crash into a tree. A violent struggle ensues as Iris tries to escape, but Richard pulls her hair, forcing her to the ground. She fights back fiercely, but he eventually overpowers her. After a brutal struggle, Iris manages to escape the car, grabbing the toy boat from her pocket as she runs. Richard appears in front of her, his face a twisted mask of amusement. He explains that the paralyzer will shut down her body in stages. First, her fine motor skills will fail, then her legs will go numb. In 20 minutes, she'll be completely paralyzed, unable to move or speak. Iris stumbles, her body beginning to give way. Her legs tingle as she struggles to move, trying to escape, but finding herself unable to run. She drops the knife as she falls to the ground. Her body's function slow, and soon she's crawling through the dirt, desperately trying to reach safety. Iris jumps into the water, carried helplessly by the current. Unable to move or speak, she struggles to breathe as the water pulls her along. The current finally leaves her on someone's lawn, where an old man, preoccupied with cleaning and checking his fuel supply, becomes an unknowing witness to her plight. The contrast between her life-threatening struggle and his routine task emphasizes her desperation. He sees her and approaches cautiously, asking if she can speak. She blinks in response. He moves his finger in front of her face, and she follows the movement with her eyes. The old man, realizing she can't move, decides to help her. He drags her inside and begins to call 911. Suddenly, a knock sounds at the door. Iris blinks rapidly, signaling that Richard is close. The old man doesn't understand and opens the door, revealing a disheveled Richard. Richard storms inside and begins searching the house. Iris remains silent, watching helplessly. When Richard threatens the old man, the tension skyrockets. The old man, sensing something isn't right, refuses to let Richard get away with it. An altercation ensues, culminating in Richard murdering the old man when he can't find Iris. He sets fire to the house before returning to his car with Iris in tow. In the car, Iris tries to speak, but her body is now completely paralyzed. At the gas station, Richard places a hat on Iris to disguise her. While he steps inside to pay, Iris fights against her paralysis to unbuckle her seatbelt. A child from another car approaches her window, triggering memories of her son. The child's mother scolds them and grows suspicious of Iris's distressed state. Before suspicion deepens, Richard returns, fastens Iris's seatbelt, and quickly leaves. Richard drives back to the crash site and systematically transfers his belongings, including a syringe umbrella, to the old man's truck. He calmly repairs his car using tools from the truck, displaying a chilling sense of control. A police officer arrives and questions Richard, who lies, claiming his drunk wife crashed their car. While the officer investigates, Iris struggles to speak, weakly trying to call for help. The officer begins to understand her plea, but before he can act, Richard violently attacks him. Richard kills the officer and coldly pours gasoline over the police car. Setting it ablaze, he ensures no evidence remains, showcasing his ruthless determination to cover his tracks. Richard talks about his twisted view of life and death, mentioning how he found clarity as Chloe died in front of him. Iris pleads with him to stop, urging him that he has a family who still needs him. But Richard is beyond reason. As they reach a pier, Iris finds the strength to grab a knife from his belt, plunging it into his neck. The boat begins to fill with water. Richard fights for his life as Iris drags herself onto the shore, her body still failing her. She watches as he struggles and simply thanks him for giving her the will to live.